Hokie Hangover live on YouTube, youtube.com/@Hokie Hangover podcast. We are here to preview Virginia Tech traveling to Syracuse, looking to improve to 6-3 on the season. But I'm a little nervous. Hokies are playing a nooner against a team that they historically struggle against on the road on the freaking CW. I don't feel fantastic about this. But hey, matchup wise, looks like it might be okay. But everything else, nah, not a fan. Guys, what's going
on? Let's check out the poll, shall we? I put a poll out on the podcast account on X and essentially asked how everyone's feeling. So as of today, Virginia Tech was 4-point favorites on the road. 62% of respondents say they're going with the Hokies -4. So they must not be that worried, guys.
I would call it a somewhat biased sample size, but I feel like our fan base, at least, so the fan base of this podcast, the subsection of the Virginia Tech fan base that enjoys this program, is aware they've been hurt before. So I respect the confidence, though.
Yeah. We'll see.
Again, we'll see. Again, on paper, this seems like a matchup that would favor the Hokies in a lot of ways. But we've been hurt up there before. A lot of teams that have been better than Virginia Tech have been hurt up there before. And the game is not played on paper, and it's a 4-point spread for a reason. Reasonably speaking, Virginia Tech should be about a touchdown spread here. They are not. So that tells you everything you need to know about how Vegas thinks this game could go sideways. Let's talk about the matchup itself like we always do. Virginia Tech entering this game 5-3. Things have been going well over the last month. I'm not breaking any new ground when I say that. Virginia Tech has been playing some pretty good football. And then when they haven't, they've been winning other ways. Basically, just see the game last weekend. Things were a little stagnant offensively. We talked about how well the defense performed. Virginia Tech's been doing a better job over the past month playing good complementary football. Hokies are 5-3. They are right now in 5th place in the ACC at 3-1. They are the only team in the ACC with 1 loss. There are 4 teams ahead of them who have not lost a game in conference play yet. And then Louisville's the only 3-2 team. And then we got a bunch of teams just in the middle because that's what we do now in these giant conferences we play in. Syracuse is one of those teams in the middle. They're 5-2. They're 2-2 in league play. They are coming off of a very interesting performance against Pittsburgh. We'll call it interesting. They turned the ball over a bunch, and they were never really competitive in the game. They played probably the worst possible game they could have played, lost 41-13 in a weeknight game last week.
Specifically, Kyle McCord turned it over a lot.
Yeah. Well, in his defense, he did throw 3 touchdown passes just to the wrong team. I guess let's start with McCord because he's a really important part of everything Syracuse does offensively. They have been throwing the ball a ton with him. Take the 64 passing attempts last week out if you want to because of just game script purposes. Even if you take that aside, he has been throwing the ball a bunch. They are basically running like a modified air raid with him at quarterback. It's worked okay. They're scoring a lot of points against bad opponents, but then they've run up against some better competition defensively, and it's been a bit of a mixed bag. So what do you guys think of the matchup, at least in terms of what Kyle McCord brings under center to Syracuse and how Virginia Tech can or cannot exploit that?
It seems like it's a good matchup for me as far as Syracuse strength is obviously throwing the football. And when I look at this Virginia Tech defense, it's about rushing the passer and playing good on the back end. This Tech defense has been iffy in the run game, better of late, but iffy in the run game this year. But you've got one probably all-conference corner in Dorian Strong, another guy who's probably just under that level of Mansour Delane. Tech's seen improved play at safety this year. Jalen Jones and Mose Phillips have played well. Quentin Reddish has looked fine. in his snaps. So for me, Syracuse, their strength matches up right up against Virginia Tech's strength on defense. And Syracuse does throw the ball a ton. I don't think that's going to be good for them in this game. They would be better off trying to mix in some run more often than they have. Mike, you mentioned the 64 pass attempts last week. McCord had 63 versus UNLV just a few weeks ago. And the other thing about McCord is that he will turn the ball over. Even if you take out last week where he threw 5 picks, he had a stretch where he threw 5 in 3 games, Stanford, Holy Cross, and UNLV. He did get away with not throwing a pick against NC State, but let's be honest, that team is lacking. But McCord's not going to offer a ton in the run game. He's not particularly mobile. Syracuse isn't going to run him a lot. That's the kind of quarterback and the kind of scheme that I want Virginia Tech to face. If Virginia Tech were to see something like Vanderbilt, where Diego Pavia is essentially just playing Houdini every play, that's a problem. But McCord is much more of a traditional passer, and I think it's going to be a lot easier for someone like Antoine Powell-Ryland to have a field day.
Yeah, and Ricky, I agree with a lot of what you said. To take kind of the devil's advocate point on it, though, in a sense, this is something that Virginia Tech really hasn't seen to this point in the season. I mean, obviously, they faced Cam Ward, and to whatever degree that they were up for the challenge. But, outside of that, and then that's over almost a month ago at this point, I mean, you face something trying to resemble a spread offense with Marshall or the quarterback that got benched. Otherwise, it's been run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Now, my colleague with 247 Sports, Doug Melvin, pointed out that outside of anyone in the FBS, Kyle McCord throws more short passes than any other quarterback. Should seem fine, right? But now we're talking about linebackers and coverage, and here's what that brings to mind for me. Rutgers threw the same short pass like 7 times in a row, and Virginia Tech couldn't seem to figure it out. That was the only, at least it's the most glaring example of a team coming in with a little bit of a passing attack, and Virginia Tech just wasn't necessarily ready for it. Now, maybe Rutgers threw you off guard, but could that work in the other direction? Because when the Orange have the ball, a guy by the name of LaQuint Allen isn't necessarily a bad running back. We've seen him in the past run well, and he can sort of be that jack of all trades, catching balls out of the backfield. I believe he's their 4th leading receiver. Most talented
receptions.
Yeah. And most talented player is their tight end. So who's the matchup there? Because that's not going to be Dorian Strong. That's not going to be Mansour Delane. So if you're looking for reasons to be nervous outside of the stadium that they're playing in, I just provided you with a couple. I still think Virginia Tech's the better team, but there's a reason that Vegas handicaps this at what I feel is a fair assessment. Virginia Tech -4.
The matchup against Oronde Gadsden, and you brought him up, Andrew, an all-conference caliber tight end. He's been named all-conference before. Very good player. I don't know who Virginia Tech uses to cover Gadsden. I don't know if it's Keontae Jenkins. I don't know if you throw a safety out there on him. He's a big target, which is why I'm kind of leaning in the direction of a Keontae Jenkins, just because I think physically he can match up and he can run with Gadsden. That is an interesting one. And he's a guy that's just tough to solve in general. Now, I will say that, for as good as Gadsden is, Syracuse and Kyle McCord in particular, he's been peppering, and you mentioned this, peppering guys in the short passing game this year. And Gadsden is one of those players who, while really effective, third on the team in receptions, big body target, it's been more of the Jackson Meeks and Trevor Pena show at receiver for Syracuse, and it's been more of the receivers have been used more in the passing game this year than they have in recent years with this new coaching staff, right? It hasn't been Gadsden. It's been, let's get the ball in the hands of our guys with a lot of speed. A lot of tunnel screens, a lot of bubble screens. That's the kind of stuff they run a bunch. So Gadsden's a problem. I think he presents a matchup problem to a lot of teams. I think he's going to be a matchup problem for Virginia Tech in this game. But I think the guys to worry about more are Jackson Meeks and Trevor Pena. Pena was banged up going into the game against Pittsburgh last week. He did end up playing, but those are the guys I think I'm almost even more concerned about, even though Virginia Tech, I think, does have the guys who can cover them well with Strong and Delane. And Strong's been a little bit up and down this year. Delane has been playing pretty good football, save for the opener against Vanderbilt. So I'm really interested to see how Virginia Tech matches up with Gadsden, but I'm almost a little bit more worried about, hey, make sure you're tackling an open space, because I think that's going to be an area where Syracuse is going to try to exploit Virginia Tech's defenses, try to get their guys with speed and space and see if Virginia Tech can tackle, which Hokie's been doing a pretty good job of it lately, but it's a matter of going up on the road and doing it in a different environment. So,
and let me add, right, like it's easy to dog on Kyle McCord for, he's coming off of a career worst game, but for a Syracuse quarterback, for an ACC quarterback for a mid-lane team, like he's a talented passer. And they have a little bit of a plethora of weapons over there, right? I know we talked going into the season about the idea that, Kyron Drones was going to be throwing the ball all over the field with all these guys, whether it be Jennings, whether it be Lane, whether it be Felton, what have you. We haven't seen that so far. And that's partially because the offense runs better when it runs through Bashal too. And Virginia Tech is better when they acknowledge the limitations of Kyron Drones as a passer. Well, though Kyle McCord might not be the best in the world, the Syracuse coaching staff doesn't really care about his limitations. He's throwing 64 balls in a game where he's throwing 5 interceptions. Like, they're sticking to their guns and they're peppering the ball all over the place. So it's something that Virginia Tech as a team needs to be aware of. And it comes down to human psychology and the psychology of the player and how he comes back from that. But I venture to say Kyle McCord's worst game is behind him. So, you can laugh at that kid all you want, but at the end of the day, this is a Syracuse team that if he's even remotely on, is somewhat primed to score in a hurry. I just don't think it's like the perfect matchup for Virginia Tech. Not totally unwinnable by any means. Again, I do believe they should be the favorite in the contest. But I wouldn't be laughing at Syracuse, and I certainly wouldn't be laughing at an experienced quarterback in Kyle McCord, because to this point in the season, outside of Cam Ward, who at the end of the day had a good game against Virginia Tech, they haven't been tested by a passer yet. In fact, they've really mostly played backup quarterbacks outside of Thomas Castellanos,
who, according to Mike McDaniel, is a backup quarterback. Sorry, I had to get that one in there.
Plays like one.
I wonder if we'll see a bit of a rotation on Gadsden, and I'm not sure that we're going to get any one-on-one particular matchup. One option that maybe is a bit off the wall, but I could potentially see working, would be Kelly Lawson, given that he's kind of a taller, lankier guy who's not as physical, but I think has the top end speed to be able to hold up. Now, whether or not he can hold up in man-to-man, that's probably a different discussion, but he certainly could be someone that could give a different look in those situations, because he's going to be a different type of defender than anyone else that Gadsden would see downfield.
We mentioned LaQuinn Allen a little bit, and Syracuse has struggled this year at times to run it, and I think that really puts Virginia Tech in a position where if they're able to wrap up and tackle in this game, they can really get after McCord with the pass rush, which I think is going to make a lot of difference in this football game. But LaQuinn Allen is a guy who can catch balls out of the backfield, who can run between the tackles, who does have speed, who does have elusiveness, who is dangerous in open space. He just hasn't really seen a lot of open space this year, right? They've really struggled to open up the holes for him in the running game. I am interested to see how Virginia Tech defends him. Virginia Tech has played better running backs this year, but he's one of the more elusive backs they've played in terms of his versatility. So, I mean, Syracuse does have some weapons offensively. I do think this is a matter of Virginia Tech kind of buttoning things up in the running game and then being able to get Syracuse in obvious passing downs and get after McCord. I would not be surprised if Virginia Tech has trouble actually bringing McCord to the ground just because he's been getting the ball out of his hands so quickly. But this to me is really going to be a test of Virginia Tech's secondary and Virginia Tech's linebackers wrapping up and tackling. Are you going to make those tackles in open space? This is one of the first games Virginia Tech's played in about a month, truthfully, really since they saw Miami, where there are guys who are, really good athletes in space, and they haven't seen that really in a while. Stanford obviously didn't present that kind of challenge. Boston College didn't present that kind of challenge. And Georgia Tech certainly didn't present that kind of challenge a week ago. So this is the first time since Miami, really, that you're facing an offense that can really challenge you in that way. This is really only the second offense on the entire schedule that's going to test your defense, in that way. So, yeah, it's going to be a matter of tackling in open space. Can Virginia Tech do it effectively here? And, this a Syracuse offense has decent team speed. So this is going to be a bit of a different challenge defensively, I think, for Virginia Tech, even though I do like the matchups that they have from a personnel standpoint.
Well, to your exact point, Mike, I mean, this is a Chris Marv gut check year 3 game, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
Randy Bates with Pittsburgh, a elder man with more experience in not only the defensive coordinator role, but just coaching football in general, clearly schemed in a way where they had a field day with what Syracuse was trying to do offensively and with Kyle McCord. You don't necessarily need to be that good to win. But, again, we've seen very, very hit or miss results from these defensive game plans. And, Syracuse, despite the loss, has an extra couple days of preparation on you. A team that certainly wants to turn the page, and a team that, frankly, fighting for their lives in terms of bowl eligibility, trying to get to the results of the season that they want. You were looking at scratching the surface of being ranked, and now you're heading back into irrelevance. There's a lot on the line for this team at home right now against a Virginia Tech team who's riding a little bit of momentum, maybe feeling a little bit good about themselves on the road, the dome, weird environment, and I hate to say it, but human nature, perhaps looking ahead a week. Are we going to get College game day? Is it going to be under the lights against number 9, 10, 11 Clemson? It's gut check in terms of game plan. It's gut check in terms of keeping your roster focused and on the same page. And in a matchup where, like we said, maybe Virginia Tech is favored in some places, strength versus weakness. But it's close enough where this one's going to come down to coaching. That's what, upper mid-tier ACC football is all about, boys. When all else is equal, who comes more prepared? And you got to hope it's Brent Pry.
Especially against a first-year head coach in Fran Brown. I mean, this is one of those where, we've gotten on Pry and the staff before in close games where they have looked like the lesser coached team, right? In terms of just situational awareness. I mean, we talked about that at length in the Miami loss. Like, that was a brutal loss, but Virginia Tech did everything they could to lose that game for as well as they played. This is one of those where, I mean, if you're in year 3, this is one you gotta. I mean, you can't be getting out coached by first-year head coach Fran Brown. That would be really bad luck. So if this comes down to coaching and you're screwing up game management stuff in a close game on the road against a first-year head coach, and you're giving the appearance that you're being out coached, that's going to be a problem. That's going to sit poorly with the three of us. It's going to sit poorly with the broader fan base, especially because Virginia Tech is in a position where, if you looked at this team coming off of the Miami loss, yeah, I mean, the Hokies were reeling a little bit, right? I mean, they had just lost a really tight game to a Hurricanes team that, you know, I think we all agree has a lot of talent, but Virginia Tech was right in that game with an opportunity to win. And the Hokies lost, and that was really tough. And Virginia Tech had already dropped 2 other games. They lost the Rutgers game. They lost a Vanderbilt game in the opener that was a little bit surprising. And so Virginia Tech was in a position a month ago where, you know, they're sitting there at 2-3, and you're going into a Stanford game. And what did we say coming out of that Miami game? We said, Virginia Tech, this is an opportunity in your schedule where if you can rattle off 4 straight wins and get yourself to Clemson at 6-3, this season is effectively turned around. You're going to have a lot of momentum going into that big home game against Clemson. You've taken care of business since that Miami loss. The question was, how are they going to come out of that? How is this team going to look? And all they did was go out to Palo Alto, kick the living shit out of Stanford, then beat Boston College to a pulp, short of a couple of weird turnovers in that third quarter. Virginia Tech dominated that game statistically. And then you have that game against Georgia Tech last weekend where you don't have your best stuff, but you find a way to win playing good, complementary, sound football on defense and special teams and situationally on offense. So now everything you wanted coming out of that Miami game is still in front of you. You have an opportunity to go 6-3. You're going up to the Dome, and as you look at this offensively for Virginia Tech, this is the game that's really interesting to me because Syracuse's defense, from a rushing defense standpoint, they're now a top 40 unit defensively against the run. But when you look at Syracuse and some of the games they've played this year, they have given up a ton of yards in some of the games they've played, right? Obviously, Ohio is not a great MAC team. Syracuse gave up a ton of yards on the ground in the opener against them. Now was a long time ago. UNLV had some success. There are teams on the schedule for Syracuse that have had success running against them. And much like the Boston College game, I look at this and I say, who has Syracuse faced from a rushing standpoint that is as good on paper as Virginia Tech? I'm having the same. I'm not sure there is anybody. I'm having that same conversation I had with you guys going into Boston College, where BC gave the appearance of a top 30 unit on paper, but I was like, you know what? I think Virginia Tech can run the ball here. I think that coming into this game, assuming Bashal Tutin is healthy, which that's a weird thing. He looked like he was practicing. Looked like he was practicing today, but then when the reporters got there on the field, it didn't look like he was doing anything. So is he healthy? Is he not? Pry's calling them probable. Is he probable like he's going to suit up and play and like actually play, or is he probable like he can be used but he's not 100%? I mean, he's calling it a significant injury, but then he's saying he's good to go. Like, what is it? What are we getting on Saturday? That's a big question too.
For sure. And it's going to affect the kind of the game script for Virginia Tech on offense. If you do not have Bashal Tutin, how do you respond to that? How do you replace him in your game plan? And I put out on X earlier, even if Bashal is healthy in this game, I still think Malachi Thomas should get a few more carries than normal. I think that would be really, really important to give him a little bit of rest and not have to run him a ton. I know that I've been saying for the last several weeks, this is how Virginia Tech wins football games, but you got to try and keep the guy as healthy as possible. So if he's ready to go, he should certainly be featured in the game plan, but you can spell him a little bit with Malachi Thomas. And also a guy like Coney, who has some talent, a young guy who hasn't really seen the field much. With PJ Prelo out, I think Coney would be somebody that could potentially see the field in this game too, depending on Bashal's health.
Yeah, agree there. The game script thing, real quick, Andrew. I just want to throw this in real quick. The game script thing's interesting because I just talked about Syracuse's rushing defense. Syracuse ranks 100th nationally in passing efficiency defense. I know that the recipe for success for Virginia Tech's offense this year has not been throwing the ball a bunch. But if you're in a position where Bashal Tutin is not healthy and you have to throw it, this might be the game that works out in your favor. Syracuse's passing defense has not been very good this year. So if you do have to sling it around a little bit more than you'd like, this is a good opponent to do it against on paper.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100% on that. And it comes down to the fact that the Syracuse team is, I mean, if you're a Syracuse fan at this point in the season, you probably don't even know who you are as a ball club, right? And we're over halfway through. So if you're Virginia Tech, you want to lock this thing into your style of football, right? And where Virginia Tech has been thrown off all year is letting up points early and then trying to claw back into it, right? We saw it against a good Vanderbilt team. We saw it against what now seems to be a pretty mediocre Rutgers team. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Virginia Tech going down 3-0 against Georgia Tech is their only comeback victory of the season. Like, my nightmare scenario here is it's noon, you're in the dome, maybe Syracuse, Kyle McCord gets the ball first. They walk down the field and score, right? You didn't plan for whatever they're doing. And then you come out with a mediocre offensive game script, 3 and out. You know, maybe you get a first down and end up punting. Now the onus is on the defense, right? Because there's no indication in my view that this team's going to come back from 14 points. Now you're playing Syracuse's style of football. And at the end of the day, say what you will about Kyron Drones. He's a good quarterback. He scored 3 touchdowns, one as a receiver, one as a rusher, and one as a passer last week.
God.
But he's not the guy that's going to win you the game in an air raid shootout. That's not who he is, at least not today. So the duality of it is so important, right? Number one, you have to come out prepared for whatever they're going to do. And number two, you have to be able to establish what you want to do offensively. And if what I'm saying scares you, I mean, I don't blame you. I'm still going to pick Virginia Tech to win at the end of this game. But this is the closest thing to a toss-up that I have felt that Virginia Tech found themselves in since the Rutgers game. And we saw how that went. But to your point earlier, Mike, right? You talk about the coaching matchup. You know, it's one thing if you're Brent Pry to be outcoached by Greg Schiano. Because Greg Schiano's been doing this thing for a long time. The last time me and Mike McDaniel were drinking beers in the parking lot of Lane Stadium in 2021, the head coach of Syracuse, Fran Brown, was the defensive backs coach under Greg Schiano at Rutgers. That was 3 years ago. So, like, naivety isn't an acceptable excuse this time around. I will never credit this to a lack of effort on the part of anyone on the staff, who, by the way, I think has done a very good job over the course of the last few weeks. I think notably, even in a game where Virginia Tech didn't perform well talent-wise, the coaching staff looked prepared. And I think that's part of the reason why Virginia Tech won that game by multiple scores. So I think they're in the film room right now at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday night or on Wednesday night, what have you. But yeah, it's put up or shut up time. Because if Tech loses this game more than any other on the schedule is going to be the one that people remember. When the team finishes 7-5, just one win better than they did last year with all the expectations in the offseason. And it's going to be like, you had to do it again. You had to go to the Dome and lose on the road against the guy who threw 5 picks the week before.
Yeah, won't sit well. Certainly won't sit well. Do you guys have anything else on this matchup? I mean, we covered everything that concerns me. I think Virginia Tech does match up well. It's just a matter of going out and doing it.
I had two things, boys. One of the reasons Virginia Tech won by as many points as they did last week against the Jackets is because, as you mentioned, Mike, they played really well, really good situational football. And I think they're going to have to be even better on Saturday. Fortunately for them, Syracuse is kind of mid in the red zone. They're like tied for 53rd in touchdown percentage when they get inside the 20. That's an opportunity for Virginia Tech to certainly keep this one within reach. I do think that Syracuse will move the ball up and down the field a little bit in this game. But if you're able to get them to stall out once they get inside the 40, 30-yard line, and you're able to get them to kick field goals inside the red zone, that's certainly going to change things. The flip side of that is that Virginia Tech was really good on third down against Georgia Tech. And while Syracuse is sixth in the country in third down conversions, just over 50% for the year. So Virginia Tech is going to have to be really sound on third down. And you can improve your chances of doing that if you're really good on first and second. And this is a game where I think someone like Antoine Power Island really needs to insert himself into the picture and create a lot of havoc back there because, again, McCord is not the kind of guy that really wants to be on the move. He's not someone that wants to have to use his legs and improvise. If you're able to get him off the spot, I think Virginia Tech's defense will fare much better than some teams have previously on Syracuse's schedule.
Agree. Pin your ears back, get after him. Plus, this was a defense that played pretty well on first and second down last week. Just keep it going.
Yeah.
Keep it going. Yeah, more of the same from a week ago. I don't have anything else. ACC picks?
Fire away.
Let's rock
it. ABC at noon. Oh, Duke. Duke's got to go to Miami as a 20-point underdog. And, man, I would really love to pick the Blue Devils here to cover because they play weird games with Miami. That offense.
It's bad.
It's bad. And Miami's defense has not been fantastic this year, but this is not the kind of offense that I feel like is going to really instill a lot of fear in Miami's defense. This total is 54.5. So, I mean, we're talking like an implied total of
44-20.
34, 44-20 would be 64. Yeah. So take 10 off that. 34-10. That's 24.
It's a believable score.
34. I don't know. Give me Miami. I don't see it for Duke's offense here more than anything. This gives crockpot potential, just like the Florida State game did a week ago. Florida State's got, I think, more talent I know they have more talent than Duke. They're not playing. They're not playing as well as Duke.
You wouldn't know it if you looked at the standings.
You wouldn't know it if you looked at the standings, but yeah, give me Miami. I just don't. This is not the Duke team, I think, that can hang with Miami. This would be pretty shocking.
Mike, it's the exact reason why you don't think it's going to happen that it's going to happen. Give me the Blue Devils to cover.
DDD, don't doubt Duke. Give me Malik Murphy over Cam Ward any day, baby.
Okay.
Wow.
It took it a little too far.
With 20 points.
I was going to say, I don't know what you had.
Duke to win outright?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say.
We'll go with the sneaky backdoor cover.
Although, again, and I think we've mentioned this before, this would be like peak Miami, peak Mario Cristobal to lose to Manny Diaz at home.
Wouldn't it be hilarious?
Chef's kiss.
Yeah, they built a new big, like almost like Vegas casino type sports bar in Charlotte. Opened last weekend. Obviously, I was at the game, so I'm going to be going for the first time for the nooner. So I'll be going to this bar. Of course, I'm sure everyone will be trying to watch this Penn State-Ohio State game being played at the same time. I'm going to be like, yeah, can I get a Duke Miami on that one? And do you guys get the CW?
Yeah. You guys carry that?
Yeah. I'm trying to get a football game on the same channel as Dawson's Creek and Seventh Heaven. Can you throw it up on that small one in the corner for me? Oh God! Speaking of
Great
gross,
there, Mike.
Thank you very much. Speaking of gross nooners, I got another one up my sleeve. We could have thrown Gilmore Girls on there as well. Stanford.
Oh, Lisa's gonna be mad you said that.
Stanford. Stanford playing NC State in a nooner on ACC Network. NC State 10-point favorite. Any takers on Stanford? Stanford's awful.
Is Ashton Daniels playing?
Does it matter? Yeah, I think so. I think he is.
Give me the Wolfpack.
Yeah.
The problem with Ashton Daniels is he's not very good. So give me NC State.
That I agree. That would be a problem considering he's their starting quarterback. I saw a stat that Stanford has yet to win an FBS game under Troy Taylor at home. This game's on the road, so it kind of defeats the purpose of that statistic. But point being, they don't play very well against FBS opponents. And
well, as much as I hyped up Syracuse, Ashton Daniels beat them on the road.
Yeah, so maybe lightning will strike twice. I don't think so, though. Give me NC State. North Carolina traveling to Florida State, 3:30 ACC Network. Carolina only a 2.5-point favorite. I can't do it. I can't do it. I won't do it. I cannot do the home dog thing with Florida State. I refuse. North Carolina. North Carolina wins this game.
The more important question here, boys, is either of these coaches back next year?
If I had to put my money on it, I would say yes to Norvell and no to Mack.
Yeah, Mack is going to retire at the end of the year. It's like Joe Biden chose not to run.
That would be a good idea, Mac. Give me
Take him out the pasture.
Tar Heels to cover this spread on the road.
Yeah, give me the Heels.
Yeah, we can't.
Florida State has not only lost all these games, but they're losing all these games by like 2 scores or more.
Although didn't you say something about Cromanhook or whatever the hell his name is? They may have found something with him.
Yeah, maybe. Carolina's defense is not very good, but Carolina's coming off of a 10-sack, 12-tackle for loss performance.
You don't have to qualify it with the defense.
In terms of this conversation, they probably faced a little bit better offense last week at Virginia, and they just went on the road and freaking destroyed them. I don't know. I can't do it with Florida State. I refuse. I will not. I won't.
You hear that, Joey? Hold them to that.
I can't do it. Louisville. The good games are the good games are at night in the ACC. The good ones are at night. Florida State. Sorry, we already did that one. Louisville traveling on the road to number 11 Clemson. 7:30 ESPN. Clemson a 10.5-point favorite. I guess we're just laying them with all these double-digit favorites this week because Louisville has been so sloppy in these games this year. They get off to these slow starts, they turn the ball over, and they do stupid stuff in special teams, and their defense just decides not to tackle until the second half, and then they just turn things around and they try to make a furious comeback. They've done it several times. They did it successfully last week against Boston College. They tried to do it in South Bend against Notre Dame. They're going to try to do it here against Clemson. Clemson's coming off a bye. I don't think Clemson is looking ahead to Virginia Tech. I don't think that's something they're concerned about. I think they're probably more concerned about Louisville coming in than going to Blacksburg. I think Louisville has their full attention. I think Clemson will be fine here. Give me the Tigers by 14. Ho-hum. It continues rolling on. The interesting thing here, though, is this is one of the better teams Clemson's played so far. So how do they look? Clemson's coming to a tougher part of their schedule. With this game, the Hokies, they got Pittsburgh in a few weeks. this is the tougher part of Clemson's schedule. So this is the start of it. Let's see how they look.
Yeah, Mike, to your point, I mean, with the exception of the Citadel, everyone remaining on Clemson's schedule is probably a better team than everyone that Clemson has played so far, save Georgia in week 1. So the challenge lies ahead of them. And to your point, I don't think they're looking ahead, but I don't have a ton of faith in this Louisville team. Give me Clemson at home to cover that.
Yeah, I'll take the Tigers.
Straight and to the point. I like it, Ricky. Pittsburgh, number 18 Pittsburgh, traveling to number 20 SMU, 8 o'clock ACC Network. A few things here. Pittsburgh quarterback Eli Holstein, he's been questionable all week. He has now been cleared to play. Nate Yarnell, who's the backup, who took some starting snaps last year, has been taking first-team reps all week. But it looks like Holstein is going to be able to go here. On the flip side, Kevin Jennings for SMU, he was banged up at the end of the game last weekend. One that they really got away with against Duke. He was banged up at the end of that game. He is also going to play. So it looks like we're going to get the best of both teams here. SMU 7.5-point favorite at home. I am not sure I trust, and these are two teams that really have not played anybody. They're combined 14-1. I'm not sure I trust SMU as more than a touchdown favorite, even at home, based on what I saw a week ago against Duke. Now, will SMU play that poorly again? No, I don't expect SMU to turn the ball over 6 times. I also don't expect SMU, if they turn the ball over multiple times again, I don't expect this Pittsburgh team to not score at all off of those turnovers. This has been a good Pittsburgh offense this year. I think they'll find a way to score some points if SMU gives them some possessions. I like Pitt plus 7.5, maybe outright here. And it's got nothing to do with thinking Pitt is like really good or thinking SMU is like really bad. I just think that I can't trust either one of these teams enough to lay more than a touchdown, even at home. Give me Pitt. Maybe outright.
This is probably a elimination game for Charlotte, right? I think if you,
probably.
lose this game, it gets really, really difficult from here on out.
Probably so. I mean, if you assume that Clemson's going to continue to play well down the stretch, I mean, Clemson does play Pittsburgh in a few weeks, right? So I think this is more of an elimination game probably for SMU than it is for Pittsburgh, just because of who Pittsburgh has in front of them still.
Fair enough.
But
I will also take the Panthers with the points. I think these two teams are probably pretty evenly matched overall, so I'm not gonna pick this to get outside of a score.
Muted. There we go.
I hate to be, essentially picking the exact same thing as you guys, but if we were playing a good old game against the spread on this, and I didn't know, I would say SMU -3. I would give them home field advantage.
Right.
And if you're that far outside of my expectations in a game where, again, 2 untested teams could go either way, as much as we like to talk poorly about him, I have a lot of respect for Pat Narduzzi and his ability to get his team up for this game as a coach in preparation. So, yeah, give me the Panthers. Ricky's giving me the look. He doesn't like Pat Narduzzi. You don't think Pat Narduzzi's a formidable coach?
Oh, God.
Sorry, just had something I had to get up there.
Yeah. That was definitely Ricky, not me. Oh man. Virginia Tech is playing on the CW. Dawson's Creek, Gilmore Girls, Seventh Heaven. That CW. That's the one they're playing on.
WWE now. They
WWE.
got wrestling on there now.
Family Feud, Smallville. Run out of shows. Nooner. Hokies, 4-point favorite. I'll cede the floor for the second week in a row to one of you. Go ahead.
Andrew.
Okay. Well, essentially, I feel like all throughout this podcast, the more I've thought about it, I've talked myself out of a Virginia Tech win.
You have.
But
You have.
I'm going to hold the line and believe that they're going to win this game. Though I think we're going to have what our good friend, Mr. Justin Fuente, used to call 3.5 hour stomach ache. Might not last 3.5 hours. These CW games tend to go a little bit quicker because of lack of commercials being bought for them. But
let your doctor know if it lasts more than 4 hours. Did I get that right? Is that... Did I get that right? Is that...
Killing me.
Mike is oddly educated about that topic.
4 hours.
Old man alert.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, it's my cross to bear on
He is a
this
father.
podcast. I don't know. Yeah.
But nonetheless, Virginia Tech comes away with the victory. Stanford's passing attack gives a little bit of trouble. Comes down to special teams at the end. It's John Love, buzzer beater field goal. Virginia Tech wins by 3, which as a 4-point favorite is not a cover. So Syracuse to cover.
In the preseason, I picked Virginia Tech to be undefeated by this point, and I picked this as when the rails were going to fall off essentially, and the season was going to go to hell in a 2-week span. I think this all hinges on Tootin being healthy and available. If Tootin is out or he's on a very limited snap count, I think this Virginia Tech offense is going to struggle a lot. If he's available and healthy, things can go, just kind of as normal. And this Syracuse defense doesn't really bother me all that much. I'm going to take Virginia Tech to cover the spread. I think it's probably in the 6 to 7 range. So we'll take Virginia Tech something along the lines of 31 to 24.
That would be
the offense will play better than they did last week, I think.
That goes over the total. Give me the Hokies. Like right around 4 or 5. Tight game. One score game.
Oh.
I think Virginia Tech wins a 1-score game this week. That's my bold prediction.
Would that mean
they win a
anything,
1-score
Mike?
game.
Is that significant for some reason, or
only so I can talk about how stupid the stat is when like half the games took place with a terrible team in year 1. That's the only. Anyway, we can keep peddling it until it's not good for the narrative anymore, and then we won't hear about it. And I'll be like, oh, what happened to 1-score game stat thing? What happened to that? It's almost like it was retarded. I shouldn't say that.
Last time I heard that stat, it was Scott Frost, and then they started calling him an alcoholic, and now he's out of a job.
Yeah. So, look, just take care of business here, right? Like, I look at this, and Virginia Tech's got an advantage in the running game. I think they have an advantage in the passing game, right? Obviously, Virginia Tech's in a position where they're facing a Syracuse passing defense that's terrible. You have advantages offensively. I think defensively, it's really all about tackling in space. I think if you play good, sound, fundamental football on that side of the ball, which is what you've done over the past few weeks, I think you'll go up there and be fine. I think part of the reason why people are really nervous about this game is because Virginia Tech historically has gone up to Syracuse and laid an egg. And I get that. I get it. I understand it. And this is a team that has shown the propensity to play a little bit up and down, right? Like, it's been a good, consistent few weeks, but every once in a while, this team does not play fantastic for 4 quarters. And go on the road, that is a concern. Just figure it out. This is not the Syracuse team to lose to. Just figure it out. I don't...
If Stanford can do it, why can't we?
Well, I will say Eric Dungy in the 2016 Syracuse team wasn't the team to lose to either. But I mean,
Eric Dungy had a little bit of baller in him.
A little juice. Yeah, he had a little bit of juice. The team overall not so great. But I mean, look, to the fans out there, who see the dome and you freak out, I'm not going to talk you down off that. Like, past performance isn't always indicative of future results, but you have the right to be nervous about this game for just the fact that it's being played in that dome against Syracuse and for a number of other reasons that we mentioned. That being said, this isn't like UVA and Tech, right? Like UVA and Tech, when Tech had that long winning streak, which essentially is continuous, they lost one time. You have year after year after year, UVA is playing Tech and they lose. And culturally within the program, there starts to become an inferiority complex and a narrative. And to his, like, you know, it almost speaks itself into existence every time. These kids on this team don't know anything about this dome or anything that happened in the early 2000s, late 90s, or even in 2016. They were in middle school or younger, and most of them probably didn't care about Virginia Tech. So that narrative should not be living with this team. And if it is, that is a massive failure on the part of the coaching staff and the leadership of the team to not be able to dispel that beforehand. It's just a regular road game against a middling ACC team. It'll be weird. It's a little bit far away. But if you are who we think you are, and certainly if you are who we thought you were, you go and you win. Anyway, you don't have to win by 15 scores. Just leave Central New York with a victory. And I'll leave the new crazy bar with all the Ohio State fans with a smile on my face.
There you go.
One thing to note, in all of Virginia Tech's long trips thus far, they've played well in both of those games.
They have.
Yeah.
They have.
Is what it is.
We need
We'll
more
figure it
airline
out.
food. We need more airline food.
God.
Who the hell wants airline food?
These guys, apparently, they're going out and kicking ass every time they eat it.
That's because they've got like mission waiting when they get off the plane.
This is true. All right. Go figure it out. And take a 6-3 record into the Clemson game. See what we can do. Let's figure it out. We all got the Hokies. Some by varying spreads, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah,
we all got them to win.
Andrew's picking Stanford with the points.
He's picking Syracuse with the points.
Sorry,
He didn't pick
not
Stanford, thankfully.
And I did not
Yeah.
pick Stanford.
That would suck.
That would suck to go back in time and lose that game.
I don't think I've picked against the Hokies with the points since the Marshall game. So this is
That's a long time ago.
It's a change of pace. And it feels like an eternity ago. These college football seasons just.
And yet it's almost over.
But in a sense, it's barely just begun. We'll see you all at the Shreveport Independence Bowl, folks.
Oh God.
Go Hokies.
Yeah. God.